Today, Chris's guest is Gregg Turkington, also known as Neil Hamburger. Gregg started out as the publisher of the influential zine Breakfast Without Meat, before going on to a successful comedy career based around his alter ego, Neil Hamburger. And now, here is Chris's conversation with his good friend, Gregg Turkington. And here we are, another edition of the Cris Kirkwood podcast. I'm Bill Cody, I'm the producer.
And I'm Cris Kirkwood, and this is my podcast, Mine and Bill's.
And Craig Parker Adams is running the soundboard, and our wonderful guest today is Gregg Turkington.
Hello.
AKA, is it okay to say?
Well, the cat's out of the bag 20 years ago. Anyway,
20 years ago?
Sure.
Okay.
Say what you want.
Neil, he also performs as Neil Hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's on me.
Now it's on
Now
you.
it's on you.
Now, nice.
I've done my part.
And Chris
Ready
and
to see me
Gregg
shine.
are old friends, so
yeah, this
not
is a
just
treat for
both
me, Greg.
talented.
It's a treat for me to have you come in and do our podcast.
It's a treat for me because all the times I used to interview you
Yeah.
30 years ago or whatever when I was a fanboy kid. And
So
it's nice to...
when did we meet? Do you remember?
Well, I
specifically?
know I first saw the Meat Puppets probably in 1983
83,
or maybe late 82.
right?
When I was like 14, 15.
awesome.
And I would talk to you guys, but, you weren't necessarily very interested in some annoying little kid, saying, you guys are so great. So I'm sure that, we talked then, but it was maybe a couple years later when I'd matured a little bit to string together more interesting sentences that we started to hang out more, have better conversations other than you guys are cool.
So we've been friends for a long time. We've known each other a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I still say to this day, the best concert I ever saw in my life, and the thing that I think was maybe the most formative from my point of view in putting on shows, was the Flipper Meat Puppet Sun City Girls at the Madison Square Garden in Phoenix. That was just 3 acts that just at that time did not give a shit about what the audience wanted, and just put on all 3 acts, just the craziest, weirdest, most unexpected sets, on this one bill. And I was used to going to these punk rock shows in Phoenix, and, I like to see Black Flag or the Circle Jerks or whatever, but this show was just something completely different,
Weren't Flipper just sick?
They played for an hour and a half that night and played a total of 6 songs, and just the anger in the crowd, where everyone wanted songs to be faster and faster, and here you're getting 6 songs over 90 minutes,
Awesome.
It was intense, and they did not give a fuck, and the song sounded so good, that just heavy bass as a lead instrument,
Right.
And then there's just, existential lyrics. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, those guys bent my noodle. They were, you were friends with them, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, I've been in contact with people from all 3 of those bands throughout my life, weirdly enough. But that show just, it stuck with me.
Who's still alive in Flipper? I mean,
Bruce the singer is still
Right.
alive. Ted the guitarist still alive, and Steve the drummer is still alive. Will Shatter died in 1987.
so that's it, just Will. I remember
Yeah,
when
but
Will
they
passed away.
there's been some other deaths because they replaced him with another bass player, and then he OD'd on heroin too. And
Oh,
so
boy.
it's one of those situations where the bass slot is the doomed slot,
The Yike. Yeah.
There's always one doom slot.
There is, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just doomed by poor quality. You know,
Right.
you can't get somebody who can play the instrument right. But in this case, it was something else. Although the last Flipper bass player, who's a woman, Rachel, who used to be in Frightwig, she's as healthy as it gets,
Good.
So the curse is over.
Yeah, good. Well, I'll point out, I remember you as a younger guy. I was a lot younger back then. And when did Gregg put out a fanzine, Breakfast Without Meat, with Lizzie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your girlfriend Lizzie at the time. And my memories go back to you guys as a couple, mostly. I remember you a little bit before that, sort of. But then definitely once Breakfast Without Meat and stuff, and you guys were like some of our pals up in the Bay Area. That was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because I moved up to the Bay Area when I was in high school, after growing up in Tempe and Scottsdale.
Did you? That's where you grew up,
Yeah.
That's how you saw the show at the Mad Gardens.
Yeah.
And I would point out the Mad Garden show that he's talking about. This was like this place. It was pretty novel as far as like gig, places to have a gig. It was actually a wrestling ring, right? Like that big time wrestling kind of stuff. And it wasn't big time. It was pretty low rent in a way. But the bands actually played in the wrestling ring, and they had like chain link.
Yeah, they had a chain link fence to stop. I think the
nice.
wrestlers from throwing each other out of the ring and into the audience or something.
And it made for, and there was this guy, Tony Victor, who was around back then, and he was the one that was putting on the shows at that place. And Tony went on to like work with JFA and that stuff. And there was a vibrant, interesting music scene going on in Phoenix at the time. It was like when punk rock was like, the way I took it at least, it was just kind of this blanket, name to, put over all these different kinds of bands. But there were so many different kinds of stuff going on, in a way.
A lot of, like, Phoenix had really, I think, the cream of the crop of like art bands, weird artsy bands,
strangely arty.
Yeah.
And I've wondered about that at the time. And then some really good, straightforward punk rock, like the Consumers. That was kind of straightforward-ish. But I mean, it kind of goes back to like Alice Cooper, in a way.
Or the Tubes were from Phoenix.
The
too.
Tubes were originally from there and moved up to the Bay Area, but
Yeah.
the guys were all from there. Yeah, and some about it. Maybe it's just that plasticine side of fucking everything. I don't know. It's just like an odd kind of a place to have a city.
Yeah, it is.
It's out in the middle of the.
And you still live there?
I do. Yeah. I still live in Phoenix, and Kurt moved out, a while ago.
I knew he was in Austin.
He's been in Austin for quite a while now. He moved out here originally, after the first time he moved. I don't know. We just like once the band got going, we were traveling around a lot and seeing different parts of the country and stuff, and it just never managed to really get out of the place. So I know all the streets by heart mostly in my way around there. But some of the stuff that was going on back then was definitely cool.
It was great. I mean, for me, as a kid that didn't really fit in or whatever, as with probably a lot of your guests. We lived very close to the ASU campus, and I would just go down there and go into the library and just research anything I was interested in. And you had the Valley Art Theater that would show weird art films and things. Yeah. And then when the punk rock stuff came out, all the bands from Los Angeles would come to Phoenix because it was a short trip, so
it's
you
on
get
the way.
to see, you get to see like the prime bands,
Yeah.
And then Tony Victor was putting on those shows at Madison Square Garden, which was $5 a show or whatever,
Right.
and there'd be like tons of good groups,
all sorts of cool stuff that came through there.
It was really great.
And before Tony even started doing that, like the level of punk rock that I got into or whatever in Phoenix was the Hate House. Remember the Hate House?
I was too young for that. But
You were too young for that?
Yeah.
And that was like that was more, we were like second, third generation, whatever, of like stuff that was actually influenced by the punk thing. Because it was definitely the punk rock that got me like playing, you know what I mean? Like doing shows and stuff, I liked playing and whatnot, but it was suddenly there, punk rock allowed for somebody like me who's not like, wasn't going to try to, especially in the 70s, it's just like, it just wasn't my thing to be like a rock and roller or whatever.
Right.
But the punk rock thing kind of happened, and it was just so undiluted in a way. It was such a small little scene and yet so fervent, and the Hate House was far out. I mean, that was like some very arty, strange shit, It was like down on, Palm and like 3rd Street in Phoenix. And it was in one of those old kind of bigger houses that Phoenix had back then. And the building itself is gone now. And it had been like this kind of revolving place, whoever could come up with the rent kind of a thing.
It's probably $200 a month.
It was definitely, not that expensive, and and that's ultimately how it wound up falling out of the hands of the of the freaks and whatever. Is somebody like stayed there or something, they got invited to stay there and realized that it was just like a tenuous grasp on this place or whatever that people had, so they actually went to the landlords, and it wound up getting taken over by those people, but it was just arty as hell, and like getting exposed to that. I mean, I got exposed to it through Derek, a lot, just the underground side of stuff. Definitely he was a little more turned on to that kind of, what was going on with like the 7 inches and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know, there's just something about Phoenix, like being out in the middle of nowhere like that in a way. And yet, it's not completely out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it is, but there's I don't know, there's enough like input to be able to not be completely out of it and yet still, be isolated enough or something. So some cool stuff came out of there.
Too, I don't know, I always feel like in places that are hot, that there's more aggressive, angry, shitty people to deal with, and so you're kind of like, if you're not like that, you're having to deal with those people all the time, and it sort of makes you want to do something else or get away from them,
And there's something about it that, like, it's such a new city in a way, that, like, I don't know, it's kind of like the Drain or something, you know what I mean? Like people wind up there, a lot of people from the Midwest, you just get this.
So cheap, too.
This air of desperation.
But even still, it seems like I remember just when I was a kid, and, there were, like, you get apartments and things for like $195 a month and stuff. It seemed like a lot of people would move out there just for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, and to get away from the snow, I mean, look at how much it's grown now. You've been back there recently.
Oh yeah,
and it's just incredible how much it's grown. And I think it's changed it from what it was back, like definitely like when we moved there in the mid '60s. Mom and Kurt and I.
Well, all the buildings that were cool and stuff, they just obliterate them. They do a lot of that here too, but they definitely did a lot of it there.
Yeah, just this no sense of like the community, community spirit or whatever.
Just
or
like cool things like the
preservation.
Cine Capri Theater,
Right,
which is
gone.
like
that was so badass.
But like the Los Arcos Mall, we used to hang out there when I was a kid. I just want nothing to do, and they just destroyed it, and it sat empty for years over some dispute. I don't know what the politics were of it, but they probably raised it prematurely. Yeah. Now there's something there, some university building
adjunct
or something. Yeah, I don't know.
And look at how the place has changed now. Like it was odd seeing Phoenix and Arizona turn into like such a redneck place or whatever. Not even redneck. I mean, like just far right. And maybe it was somewhat always that way. But for it to like risen to the fore and like these knuckleheaded sort of like outlook or whatever. I don't know. That was an odd one as well. To see the place change in the way that it has.
I mean, it always was Republican, but it was a different kind of Republican than you have now,
Yeah. Well, the Republican Party was a lot different than it.
Yeah, the Barry Goldwater scene was very different than I just remember when I was in, 5th grade or whatever, and like Jimmy Carter was running against, Ronald Reagan,
right? And
just the informal poll in the classroom, it was like asking whatever 6th graders or who do you want, and I was like Carter, and all the other kids were Reagan,
Yeah.
And all right, same with like the Ford thing before,
Right.
It just wasn't very balanced.
Yeah, odd that way. I think part of it is, it's also a big retirement community, so I think that plays a part in it as well. People with enough money to be able to comfortably retire someplace, and they're of an older generation or some crap, But the thing that I think led to some cool bands being, happening back then, one was punk rock, allowing, people that weren't going to be like typical rock and roll bands in a way. But then it being a smaller city back then, and the isolation somewhat, not isolation, but just that like fucking little hot zone or whatever, and just something about that allowed it to spit out some really interesting stuff, that it's now looking back just like, Jesus, like the Sun City Girls, those guys were so far out,
I just have so many friends too that I didn't necessarily know when I was there, but people like Don Bowles,
right?
Who I see all the time here in town, but he's a Phoenix guy. Or
Totally.
Prairie Prince from the Tubes.
You know Prairie?
Yeah, he plays drums for my Neil Hamburger country band. He's
Wow.
like my drummer, and he's just like the best, sweetest,
Such
and
a
the
sick
best
drummer.
fucking drummer of all time. And he fucking plays in my band. It's ridiculous. But he's a Phoenix guy too, and
totally.
and then like the Bishop Brothers, and it's interesting.
I went and saw the Tubes in like 76 maybe 77 or something, and I waited till Mom fell asleep, right, so I could take her car, and it was at the Celebrity Theater, right? This is a theater, it's been there probably late 60s or something when they built it, and it's a theater in the round. It's actually a round stage, and it rotates.
Is it still there? Is it operational?
Yeah, it still is. Yeah, and they still have shows in there and stuff. So I went down to see the Tubes, and I had recently gotten into psychedelics, so I went alone, and I dropped, right? So like, and opening the show, this is like even, before the Phoenix had started to get, before the punk rock really kind of happened, was this band Loosely Tight, right? Which is another couple of brothers, cool name, Loosely Tight, and they opened the show. And then the Tubes came out, and then I was fucking hammered, and I ran into a friend of Kurt's from high school, and wound up getting more stoned on some other different things, you know what I mean? So I was like good and stoned, and about halfway through the Tubes set, I realized I'd lost Mom's car keys, right? So I kept going like into this place where I was real stoned and like going, oh man, the Tubes were just blowing my mind, right? To then like that thought would lead around to, but I fucking lost the car keys, right? And I never did find them that night. I wound up having to like thumb home in the middle of the fucking night, And the next day I'd left my phone number or some shit and wound up getting my fucking the keys back and rescuing the car.
If it makes you feel any better, I've lost car keys without ever having done anything more than drunk a cup of water beforehand.
No, that water will get to you.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, that it was that experience made it to where I broke myself of the habit of losing the car keys. So, so then, when did you move to San Francisco?
I moved there, I guess in summer of '83, something like that.
And you just went up alone?
My parents had gotten divorced years before. My dad was living down here, and then he moved up to San Francisco for work over the summer, and I was so into Flipper and so sick of Phoenix, and I just was like, Mom, I'm going to live with Dad, and so I went to the last couple of years of high school in San Francisco, and it was as different as night and day, because it's weird in Tempe, like I went to Tempe High. I actually liked going to school. I would get, I was a straight A student and stuff. I moved to San Francisco, and the school was so shitty. Like it was just unpleasant.
Was
terrible
it in the city?
place. It was in the city, but it was just like it was over full, and they didn't really care. And it was just like being babysat for 6 hours a day. It was kind of like, here's your easy assignment. You've got a week to finish it, and then you just sit there. And so I just stopped going and just started going to these punk rock shows 7 nights a week. And then I started singing in bands and started the fanzine, and then I started working at Subterranean Records, and I just had this huge life that I developed really fast of just doing stuff. Whereas when I lived in Tempe, I was watching a lot of TV, maybe reading a lot of books, but the punk rock, like in San Francisco, I actually got to be more of a part of it, and I just kind of built my own little empire really fast there, And I was like popular all of a sudden, whereas in Tempe, I was like the person to beat up, There, I move out there, and it's like, yeah, you want to sing for my band? You want to do this? Like just shit started happening. It was crazy. It was really, and I was like 16, 17, it was just it all went down.
And there's a lot of good punk rock going on up there.
There was at the time, Yeah. The weird thing is as much as I loved moving there, and as much as I was like the sort of person that couldn't give an oral book report in school without dreading it for months in advance. And then when I'd get up, I would just shake and stammer, and like I couldn't, like I would get nervous raising my hand during roll call, and saying here, like I would be stressing about that. And I got up there, and just something about it, just suddenly I'm like fucking going on stage and singing with, maybe some of it was that, I was drinking peppermint schnapps, and maybe that was some of the confidence. I don't know what it was, but it just changed everything, the whole punk rock thing. But really, though, that was kind of the tail end, I think, of a great period in San Francisco with great bands and great things going on. And then it all sort of dried up, and the city kind of started going down the drain. I know in 1984 they had the Democratic Convention there, and Feinstein, who was mayor at the time, didn't want the all these little punk rock clubs on Broadway
Right.
to scare away the delegates that might be down there looking for strip clubs and prostitutes and things. So they started cracking down on those clubs, and clubs that used to have a real loose attitude about kids going in.
Yeah.
Suddenly they're checking IDs, and some of the clubs started disappearing. And there's just like this weird crackdown. And I think after that, it wasn't really quite the same, you know?
So you stayed, but you were still up there.
Yeah. I stayed up there until about 1989.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you moved here?
Then I moved to New Mexico for a couple years, and then I moved back to the Bay Area in 91.
So when now, when we first started hanging out, you know, when I got to know you, you were going out with Lizzie at the time, and then like the fanzine. I remember the fanzine, and like I remember a couple of the interviews Derek did that you guys ran. Like
Yeah,
that
because
one.
Derek was like an interview subject, but we just loved his point of view and loved his art and everything. And eventually he became like a co-editor for us, you know, and was interviewing people like Hal Blaine and Tiny Tim. And we were getting totally away from the punk rock bands and, you know, interviewing Jimmy Webb and Pete Townsend and people like this, you know, but then always with like a core love for Meat Puppets and Flipper, Sun City Girls, you know, like all those things were still real touchstones, you know.
I remember in that Tiny Tim interview, Tim refers to Derek through the whole thing as Mr. Bostrom, you know, and it was all about like Slavic folk music mostly, or kind of stuff, the stuff that, you know, the guy was actually really versed in, you know, Eastern European kind of musics, as opposed to him as this oddity, you know, or Miss Vicky getting married. That's the guy, Tiny Tim, for those of you who are dinging on that, his big hit was Tiptoe Through the Tulips, right? You know? And are you old enough to remember when he got married on The Tonight Show?
Well, I'm old enough to have read about it.
Okay, yeah. I remember that when that happened.
It was like before MASH, like I think it was like one of the biggest.
Hugely watched.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it was like when they walked on the moon or whatever.
Yeah, like it's up there with like the Beatles playing, you know, Tiny Tim's wedding.
And it should be. I mean, that was a great time where Tiny Tim could draw that kind of viewership because he's a really, really talented guy, you know? Not at all a novelty act.
No.
Not to my way of thinking.
And like, you know, Derek knew that, and that's what the interview was about. You know, it went in a different direction, or just a direction that, you know, Derek was aware of, to be able to take it into the realm of like where the guy was coming from and the, you know, his roots music and stuff. So then another thing I remember, you know, one of the things you started doing already, I mean, you're somebody up in the Bay Area, right? And that's a far out town. It was a far out town back then. You know, had just great times up there. And so that already you like could handle living there. You know what I mean? So that kind of sets you in a particular place in a way. But then you started doing comedy stuff. It wasn't like specifically comedy stuff. It wasn't like you were like, you know, I'm now a comedian or anything. But it was just an extension of your personality, as I saw it. And you started like we got some of those cassettes that you did back then, like the crank phone call stuff.
Yeah.
And that stuff has stuck with me since. Like Gregg would do these. It predated like the crank phone calls became popular, and they actually like had some TV shows were talking about that.
Oh yeah,
earlier
there
with
was
the
actually a
Hayden
Jerky
sisters.
Boys movie.
Jerky Boys movie and with Tom Jones in it.
So
Directed by a friend of mine. I think
really?
that was his second and last movie, if I remember.
I like
right.
the movie's not bad.
Yeah, it just I think they put a lot more money in that movie than you would think they probably should have.
Yeah.
well, and like you didn't invent crank phone calls, of course. You know that's been around since phones started happening and stuff. But I mean, to actually take the time to get them on cassette, you know,
Right.
and then share them with people. And there was some great stuff on there. The one where you call those people and you're like, "Oh, happy day." Remember that? I don't know if you
Don't
remember this.
remember that.
The premise, you're calling from like a Korean adoption agency, and you call these.
I've heard you sent this one.
I love that one. That's just amazing stuff.
I don't know. I don't even know if that's me. I don't know. That doesn't ring a bell.
It was you. It was on the same tape with all the other stuff. Definitely. Where you call the place and you tell them you're a fat man and you want to order a
Yeah,
pizza.
yeah. That's me.
Yeah.
That's
It was on
me.
that same tape.
Okay.
It was on that same tape.
Well, anyone can make a tape.
That's true.
I don't know if that's me. I don't
Really?
know about Oh Happy Day. I mean, it sounds great. Maybe it is, but I don't remember it.
I thought, you know, I mean,
Well,
you know,
it was funny, so take credit for it.
yeah.
I don't want to take credit for
I don't know where
stuff
else I could have
didn't
gotten
do.
it from. We could ask Kurt. You know who would remember it specifically.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, as I remember it, you know, you call these people up and tell them that that they're their
Me or
child that they're
someone
adopting.
calls them.
So you or someone did. And the guy like loses his temper, saying, "Don't you bring any, slant-eyed kids over here," something like
Yeah,
this.
now this is not me. I swear I've heard this now that
Right.
you go into it more, but I don't think that was, I mean, I know that wasn't me.
Wow, far out. Who the hell could that have been? Well,
But it was on a tape with these other
I
all
thought
this
it-
pizza. I mean, I did a lot of them too because I did that record, Great Phone Calls, around 1991. But before that,
yeah, this is way before that.
5 years before that, I was just shitting out crank call
Yeah.
cassettes like crazy and sending them to Derek and stuff. And I mean, I don't even have any of those tapes. So I don't really know what's on them.
I would be
or
surprised
what
if
was going on.
Derek might still have that stuff.
He's got a lot. He's got a
completely
good
surprising.
archive.
He does. He's got all sorts of stuff. The other one that I love is you answer an ad in the paper. Remember that one? Where you call up the guy and tell him you're going to be his bass player?
Oh yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And the guy gets so miffed at you that he offers to meet you someplace in the city so that you can duke it out.
Yeah.
And I remember you said, "I'll play bass licks on your grave." It's just,
and
stuck
that
with me.
track, that was funny because that ended up on the record that we did, but that got sampled by at least a couple different major label artists. Where I ended up
Really?
getting a payday. Where there's just
Wow.
sampling, me singing "I'm on fire" or whatever. I'll play bass licks on your grave. These kind of phrases
Right.
over. There's a British act called Sonny J that sampled it on an album for
And you got
like
paid for
EMI.
it.
Yeah, I got paid for the. They did something cool with it. And then there was a Japanese group that Grand Royal put out called Buffalo Daughter that also sampled one of these calls. And
Wow.
yeah, that's the dream thing to get is a phone call. Somebody wants to sample something of yours.
Right.
It's just sure, yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's weird, because I thought that was like, our own special little thing or something in a way, and then to have seen you, like, to survive, you know what I mean? And so many people didn't, in a way, and yet to go on to what you've gone on to, I mean,
It is weird.
It's fucking cool, I think.
Well, it's weird because Neil Hamburger, the character Neil Hamburger, was just a character in one of those prank phone calls.
Okay.
And it was, when I would make those calls, I often didn't have a plan. It's just you're doing a ton of them. You're, it's really excitable, and you're just dialing numbers and just whatever the fuck comes out of your mouth. And so I was like, oh, here's a comedy club. Let's call the comedy club. And I called up and I was like, yeah, my name's Neil Hamburger. Book me or whatever. And I did a couple of these calls like this, and they were popular prank phone calls in the popular prank phone call world.
Right.
And then this other label, this little record label back east, said, we really like that Neil Hamburger stuff. Would you do a couple more of these Neil Hamburger calls for this compilation we're doing? And I said, sure, why not? That's great. But then when it came time to submit it, I thought what would be funnier is to submit a recording of what this guy's stand-up show was like. So I did that on a 4-track and recorded the audience sounds and did like the show of what this guy's show would be like. And I enjoyed doing that so much that from then on I started doing more of these and culminating in a full LP of a faked show and so on and so forth until finally I started getting offers for shows. And then,
That's awesome.
and then have this whole career based on it. But it really had its entire roots are in this prank phone call.
Wow.
Which is like a very weird career trajectory.
When did when did that LP come out?
1992.
Okay.
Yeah. And I started, I think maybe like 2 or 3 Neil Hamburger singles of the fake stage show with the fake audience sounds. And then Drag City Records got in touch with me and wanted to do an LP of this shit, And I thought, wow, to make a comedy album, I'm going to really put everything I have into this and every idea I can possibly come up with. And so I really worked hard on this Neil Hamburger album, and, it came out the way I wanted it. And then they asked for another, and then the show offers started to come in. And I think I had 4 albums out before I did a single show, because I just looked at it as a weird recording project, as a fun, almost like there's a lot of like Foley involved. I would record ice clinking in the glasses.
So you did the albums before you did a show.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were three albums, maybe 4. At least 3.
Had you come up with like the look of the guy by that point?
Well, there was a drawing. I would put drawings on the covers, and that was part of it. Was that in my mind, this guy's a lot older than me, and it's just it's like I can't look like this, but time catches up. And eventually, I could look like that. I mean, and it's amazing too what glasses and a suit will do. I mean, as Superman proved, the difference between Clark Kent and Superman really is just like
glasses,
hair slicked back and some glasses. And this is a variation of that, the hair slicked to the side and glasses.
And kind of greasy.
Yeah, and tuxedo instead of the cape or whatever. But
so were you into comedians? I mean, is that like...
I think Derek and I really shared this. I was really into National Lampoon.
Mm-hmm.
I was really into humor stuff. I was really into funny stuff. I liked the Steve Martin records when I was growing up. I was really into Albert Brooks,
right?
His movies and his comedy albums and things. I think, and I really liked Richard Pryor. I think when I got into the Andrew Dice Clay scene, like that was very inspirational to me, especially the album "The Day the Laughter Died," in which Dice goes out to an audience in a small club, and it's just like, I'm not going to do any material tonight, and just kind of rambles and fucks with people, and it's this double album with no jokes on it,
right?
And it's such a bummer, but to me it was the funniest comedy album I'd ever heard, because there are no real jokes, but it's just, and it's a character too, Dice is a character, and he's doing this, he's just so committed to it that everyone hated him.
So that's a character. So that's
just a character.
Right.
I mean, he's an actor, but anyway, but that record really inspired me because of the combination of the punk rock stuff, the lessons that could be learned from that, the interest I have in traditional showbiz guys, and whether it be Richard Harris or Frank Sinatra or whatever, and then this Dice thing, all that stuff kind of comes together in a way for me at some point, and helps be the blueprint for some of the stuff that I got into doing.
And there was that, there's like that's like one element of comedy, that like some people have really mined well. Like I think of like Don Rickles, and that guy was stood out so much, like gets back to like the Tonight Show and stuff, when I became sentient, was somewhere in the mid 60s, became aware of stuff. And that guy was just so sharp witted. And the whole thing was based on like rubbing people the wrong way, kind of.
I mean, and it's essentially a character. I mean, he's like the nicest guy in the world if you talk to anyone that knows him or has had dealings with him. And on stage, he's the biggest dick.
It's incredible.
Who ever fucking lived,
Right.
I always like those kind of guys, though, more than, comedians that go up and talk
Like
from the heart
right.
about their lives or whatever. I'm not really that interested in that. I want a show. I want someone to put on a fucking show.
Or like take advantage of the fact of humor to be something that's fucking trippy, Like I remember the first time I saw Andy Kaufman, it was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Like that My Breakfast with Blassie was just...
Oh, that is so good.
I watched that so many times. I was obsessed with that.
It's one of the... Anybody who hasn't seen My Breakfast with Blassie really should. And
that's my favorite thing that he did.
When I first moved down here, we lived next to is it a Sambo's that they're at?
Yeah, but it's out on...
It used to be, it was on, I think it was on Vermont.
Yeah, Vermont and like kind of near Wilshire. It's a Denny's now.
Yeah, well, we lived at 3rd and Alexandria, and we were like so excited that they filmed. Like,
I'm still excited when I drive down Vermont and see that place, even though it's not a Sambo's anymore.
Yeah, it's something else now.
There's a great website that anyone can find from this guy who was a photographer for Sambo's, and he was given an assignment to go around a certain year and photograph the interior and exterior of every single Sambo's location for the corporate office to use for something. And he did, and then, I don't know what happened. The photos didn't get used or whatever, and of course Sambo's went out of business. And so this guy started this website, and he just got all the photos on there, and he'll sell prints of any of them, and they're just such beautiful buildings and such interesting interiors.
Sambo's, remember when they were called Little Black Sambo's?
The restaurant? I don't know if the restaurant was called that.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
I mean, there was a children's book called that.
Well, I think that's why they use it, because the guy like ties the tiger's tails
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
And they run and run until they turn into butter. So the melted butter on the.
Yeah, it's a
I don't think
classic
the restaurant
tale.
was called Little Black Sambo's,
No?
but they did have. They used to have cartoons.
Oh, that's
of
what it
Little
was,
Black,
or
and then they
something.
changed those.
Something like that. One of those
cartoons.
things.
Kind of lightened him.
They
I mean,
did have to change something. I remember
he was
that.
Indian.
Was he
in
Indian?
the original story?
Yeah, it's an Indian thing, because they're tigers, right? So it's
Right,
like
right.
India,
And they turn into pancakes.
Well, they turn into butter.
Oh, okay.
He like ties their tails
well, you need
together.
that for pancakes, right?
You're right, and then it's melted butter because he ties their tails together and they run and run and run in a circle like several tigers, to the degree that they turn into like molten butter.
I wonder if you could still do that, like get like 4 tigers
Oh, yeah.
together.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you can do that any day of the week.
I bet.
pop out. We'll do it later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go down to the zoo. There's a Sambo's still in Santa Barbara, by the way, that has all that shit.
There's an actual Sambo's.
Yeah, it's the original one, and it's still there.
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't eat there, but I'd go in and look at the place, buy souvenirs.
Wow.
So like now, you've been doing this professionally now, right?
Yeah,
For a while,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, people get it, right?
Well, it's not for everyone.
Well, I mean, the people that come to the shows, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, if I play a show in New York City or Boston or Austin or Portland or something, I'm going to have a very enthusiastic, positive crowd. If I do a show, in Sioux Falls, there could be some folks that aren't too satisfied with the show, But, there'll still be plenty that are. It's just a lot depends on how these things are promoted.
right.
If it ends up in the daily paper and somebody's like, comedy night at the so and such place, and somebody's hasn't heard of me but wants to go to a comedy show, ends up there, then you could have some surliness or some apathy or whatever.
Has surliness happened? Have you?
Oh God! I mean, I got every surly tale in the book. I mean, I had somebody jump on the stage and attack me. I've had, when I was touring with Tenacious D, every night was it was a half an hour set. Every night was just a wall of booing for the half hour.
That's awesome.
And it was, like Madison Square Garden, that, to me, this was a pinnacle. Really, one of the pinnacles of my life was opening for them there and having the entire crowd chant, "Asshole, asshole, asshole," during the whole set, And I'm just up there looking around thinking, yeah,
Perfect.
okay, whatever.
No, dude,
Yeah, I'm on stage at Madison Square Garden. You can't take this away
And
from
it's
me.
perfect, too.
You guys are out there acting like a big mob of dumbasses,
It's perfect for the character. in a
Yeah,
way,
it was
you know?
fine. It
Just
was
like-
great. It was beautiful. It was fun,
That's incredible.
Because people would say, "Oh my God, that must really crush you after a while," and no,
you're a character.
It's cool. Because Jack and Kyle are on the side of the stage laughing. I can see them, and those are the guys that I'm concerned with what they think, and you know what I mean. A bunch of guys in the audience that don't, because they would start booing before I'd even start talking. They're there to see a headliner. You know what it's like. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're the opener, they already hate you. But then when you're the opener and you come out in a tuxedo and look like you're 60 years old and start off telling some just joke that is on a subject that they don't know or care about, it's just all the strikes are against you, and they're gonna lash out. But then also, like, doing as many shows as I've done like this, you learn interesting crowd control techniques, which can be, by the end, I could silence them. I could get them to applaud for me. I could get them to do different things because I'd start bargaining with them. If you guys do this will be the last joke I tell, and I'll bring out Tenacious D, as if I would have the power to just, but they would believe it, and then I'd fuck with them for a long time, and then they'd get angry, and then I'd do it again. All right, no kidding around. You want me to bring out Tenacious D?
Awesome.
And they go crazy. And I'm like, all right, I just need you to applaud for this next joke, or, this kind of stuff. And it was weird. It would work every night, these tricks, once I figured them out, after a few of these grim shows. Eventually in London, it came to a head kind of at the end of the tour, but people were throwing those coins, over there, those 2 pence coins. Those are big.
They're
They're
hefty.
like they're like the old silver dollars here, you know, but they're not worth anything. They're worth 2 pence or, you know, 3 cents or whatever, 3.5 cents. And they're happy to throw those at you. And we were doing a show at the Hammersmith, which is smaller than most of the venues that we were playing on that run. And so it was easier for people to hit you with this. Because if you're playing a big 10,000 seat, you know, basketball arena or whatever, there's such a big barrier.
Right.
If somebody throws something, you
really
can
good
see
arm.
it. You see it coming. You got time to move. It's fine, you know. But at a smaller place like this, there's no hiding. And so people were fucking throwing these things and they're bouncing off my head and they're just, you know, it was getting kind of harrowing. And my wife was in the audience and she was freaking out seeing this happen. And these guys in front of her threw a coin and it hit me. And then I don't know if they high-fived each other or whatever, but they were excited. And she just lost it and grabbed the guy and is like, "Don't you hit my husband, you know, don't you throw shit at my husband." And just punched him in the face a couple times.
Wow.
And, you know, that was the way that was really the end of the tour. And that was a great way to go out, you know. And she came backstage just shaking because she'd never hit anyone in her life. And she just lost it because it had been building up to this. Right. She was going to all these shows in England and these coins were being thrown and there's just this negative response. And it didn't necessarily get to me, but after 30 days of it, when they start throwing things on top of everything else, then it does start to get to you a bit just in terms of, is this dangerous? You know, I'm going to lose a fucking eye, you know?
Yeah.
And so this being the smallest venue of all, everything came to a head.
And I mean, it's an interesting like point to get to in a way, you know, where that's almost the intent of the character in some ways. I'm reminded of like when, I mean, it's the intent, but you don't want to get hurt, you know?
No,
not like for
no.
real hurt.
No.
You know?
Well, it's weird. I feel like when you're talking, it's weird how much more angry they'll get. I mean, if those guys had just brought the shittiest band in LA, you know, out on the road, probably people would boo or maybe talk during it, but I don't think you'd get this kind of venom. And I admit I'm baiting them a lot of the time, you know, but just, yeah, and also people, I think, go off of the cues of the people around them. Like I always maintain 25% of the crowd really likes this. 25% really hates it. The people that like it are sitting in their chair next to each other going, "Can you believe this? This is fucking amazing." Like, you know, they're not necessarily saying anything. They're laughing. They're into it, you know. But the people that hate it are standing up, "Fuck you, you suck, yeah, fuck it," all this shit. And so the 50% that don't know what to think, they're going to follow the cues, I think, of the louder ones.
Squeak your wheel.
Because when my wife hit the guy in the face and all this and it was like, "Don't you hit my husband," and stuff, he apologized right away and he was like, "I'm sorry." No, he actually had some pretty good jokes, you know. It's just like, it's just mob mentality. I mean, it's the same thing that happens at these fucking sports events, but you know, there's a real ugliness when there's a mob, a lynch mob. They see this opportunity like, "Fuck this guy, let's all unite in our total hatred." And, you know.
It says something pretty creepy about people in a way. I mean, considering that the character is an elderly kind of a guy.
I know.
You know what I mean? That they're willing to be so inconsiderate, now downright hostile.
You want to know the worst, even worse than this. And also, I consider Tenacious D to have like some of the more intelligent fans that there are.
Yeah.
So the fact that it was happening at their shows was bizarre. Like,
Yeah, it is
I
a
actually
little odd.
thought like, well, these guys are characters. Their act is character-based comedy, and they, you know, I had a cameo in their movie, and I kind of just thought, you know, but I was wrong. But I did these shows in Australia with this punk group there called Frenzal Rom, who actually offered me the first ever Neil Hamburger shows. When it was just a recording project, they said, "We want you to open for us." And I said, "I don't do that. I just do records, you know." But they kept working on it, and eventually said, all right, I'll do it. I'll try it. I'll see what happens. I'll give it a try. So I go out there to Australia, and I'm doing these shows with these guys who are super, super popular punk band over there. And we got to Perth, and we were doing 2 shows in Perth, one in Perth and then one in a suburb of Perth called Scarborough, which was, I don't know, seemed like maybe a half hour away. And the Perth show was so scary with people throwing fucking Jack Daniels bottles and just all this shit raining down on me. So the next night, because we were still in the general area, I was really scared.
Right.
And I went and rented a wheelchair from a pharmacy in the neighborhood near the venue, and I had the Frenzel's roadies wheel me out onto the stage to start my set, and I took the microphone and I said, "Hey, I'm here from America through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I have terminal cancer, and I'm only going to be alive for 6 more months. And thanks to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, I'm getting to live my dream, which is to do stand-up comedy in Australia. So thank you all for your patience." and so everyone's like, "Oh, okay," and I'm telling these horrific, offensive fucking jokes, and everyone's looking around at each other. They can't quite tell if this is for real or not. And then after about 15 minutes, I'm getting near the end of the set, and everybody's just been patient, believing this story. And then at the end, I've got maybe 2 jokes to go. Somebody fucking throws a glass at me anyway, even though I'm in a wheelchair.
In a wheelchair.
Yeah. And then a couple more people start throwing shit. And then I jumped up out of the chair and grabbed the mic and it's like, "Fuck you, assholes, I can walk," And then I ran off the stage in a fucking shower of shit thrown. But anyway, the point was that, yeah, even in the wheelchair, there was no immunity to that sort of mentality.
Wow.
Opening is, it can be bad.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't do that much of it anymore.
Right.
Because I think I proved my point, basically.
I'm reminded of the Kaufman bit where he did the wrestling. Mm-hmm.
Oh God, the baiting of those people in Memphis.
You seen that?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean I've eaten up everything that Andy Kaufman did, but
Right.
it's interesting because that kind of did kill his career in some ways.
That and then also physically dying, also, which happened
Well,
soon
that
after
does-
that. But
Yeah, but he was struggling at the time.
well, it was just such a conceptual thing, and he was totally committed to it. And
Right.
some of these other things, people could get their heads around, and this just seemed to exhaust people.
Well, it was so deep. I mean, it was such a like a deep con or whatever. Like when he went on, like, what was it, Letterman, and the dude like slapped him.
Yeah.
And that was fake though, wasn't it? I mean, that was.
Yeah, no, it was.
You hear
absolutely
different
fake.
stories, but
But
Well-
it's so deep that you still hear different stories. It's like,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it
Well, 'cause
actually?
I think it's kind of like actual pro wrestling. You don't want to, like, I actually used to go to pro wrestling back in the 80s with my friends, and you would find that, because a lot of people go like, well, how can they believe this? But you'd go down there, and the people knew that it was fake, but you can't. It's like watching a stage play, right? If you don't, like, give into the stage play, you're not going to enjoy it.
Right.
And if you don't give into the play that is the wrestling,
The suspension of disbelief.
Right, exactly.
So, but I mean, it was never. What? I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, it was. I don't know. Kaufman, it seemed like that was his intent. I mean, to actually, he's actually wrestling those women, and they didn't seem like part of the act. That actually seemed like audience members that were coming up.
I think those were just audience members. Yeah, that
So
he was fucking with.
taking it out, to the degree where it's like, you're hanging your ass out there in a way, in the deep South like that, and
Oh yeah.
goading people onto those heights, because you look at like what's happened, I mean, all the way back to like John Lennon, you know what I mean, where it's like, hey man, we're just playing some music, or what was the radio guy in, where was it? Was it in Dallas?
Oh, Denver.
Or in Denver?
Denver, they
In
got
Denver.
shot.
Alan Berg.
Yeah, him,
Yeah.
and they're, the guy, and then with the Bogosian made a movie about it,
Well, you got this stuff going on in Pakistan right now, constantly with these people that are speaking out for, atheism essentially,
Right.
and they're getting murdered
They're getting murdered over it.
constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. These women that are just like, they set up. There's one that set up like a bookstore or a bookstore cafe or something, and was just openly talking about atheism and how you didn't necessarily have to be part of Islam, and murdered
Murdered over
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Well, and I mean,
this
that's
is just going on right now.
it. It's always gone on in a way. I mean, if people are willing to throw bottles at somebody in a wheelchair, because they don't like his comedy, you know what I mean? It's just like, they've already paid money to be there. They've come to a comedy show. You know, it's like you can't get your head around
And
that.
how many times, like, do I walk into fucking Albertsons to buy groceries and there's this horrible Nickelback or something playing on the radio, and I just like, I want to fucking walk out of this store because this music is crushing my spirit. It's so offensive on every level. It's so slick and disgusting. And you know, I just buy my groceries and leave. I don't turn over the fucking avocado cart. You know what I mean? I don't sweep the fucking shelf of Perrier onto the floor and have a fucking tantrum. Or bad movies that I go to, I just walk out and say, well, you know, wasted another $14. But these fucking people can't just let it be.
They're paid to go to a comedy show.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? It's just like you're paid to be there, you know. And
I mean,
this is your response to
if
it.
you go to a concert and there's a comedian and you don't like it, it's still like you're giving your ears a rest, you know.
Right.
The thing is, if you go see AC/DC and they've got two really bad hard rock bands on first, then your ears are shot by the time they get on, you know, and you're not going to enjoy it as much. You'd be better off with a comedian just kind of sitting there and waiting to have the fucking loud music come on, right?
Definitely. One of my favorite opening acts, I just reminded of, back in the late 60s, I went and saw the Harlem Globetrotters at the Coliseum in Phoenix. You know, that's a bitchin' building. That's still there. You know,
I saw Sister Sledge there.
Sister Sledge, awesome.
With,
Nice.
fuck,
Did they do their one big hit?
We Are Family?
Yeah.
Oh, with Kool and the Gang.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, they did We Are Family. They had one other one too, didn't they? Sister Sledge.
We'll
Probably
get our,
did.
Well, anyway, who cares?
so,
Look it
well,
up.
we'll look that up.
Whereas Cool and the Gang was cranking out the hits.
Yeah.
So
Sure were.
the Harlem Globetrotters, you know, and I mean, there's fake stuff, you know. I mean, like the Washington Senators, wasn't that the team?
Washington Generals.
They're the Generals, and they're like the losing his team in
losing
sports
his team in
history.
history.
They lost that night, but the opening act out in the middle, right? It's the Coliseum set up for basketball, you know, and it's a pretty big Coliseum, you know, and out in the middle of it, of the basketball floor, they set this like platform, you know, kind of carpeted, and they had a contortionist as their opening act.
Wow.
You know? It was fucking awesome. It was awesome. It was this guy out there, like the kind of guys that can twist themselves around to the degree that it's like, you know, hey, you could make some money doing that, and you know, and that was their opening act.
But it's just like on a platform with all this space around
All
him.
this huge amount of space, you know, just 50 feet, you know, at least away from the people who are all in the stands, you know, back there, and there's this guy out there like just doing his contortion
That's
thing. And there
amazing.
might have been music put to it, or you know, maybe even not, but I mean, I definitely, you know, we experienced our fair share of like that hostility.
Oh yeah, I'm sure when you'd come down here and do shows with these SST bands and things, you must have got some.
We played with Flag a lot.
Yeah,
you know, and we would get those punk rock shows, and even at like arty kind of shows, we get it, you know, and like and it's like all fun and games to a point, you know. I remember one night playing at the Mabuhay, talking about the clubs up on Broadway in San Francisco, and it was back when it would just be like suddenly it's starting to turn, you know, and it's just like, hey, fuck you guys. I didn't get into fucking playing music, you know, to be policed by, you know, you douchebags. That's, you know, and I remember like it happened in a split second, but it was like slow motion where I like had my mouth open, screeching away at the microphone, and I see this guy's head come up and thoosh, he hawks this loogie, and the fucking thing, you see it coming in, boom, it hit me right in the back of the throat. It was just putrid, right? Where I like kind of saw it and I'm like, oh, motherfucker.
Just nothing to do except throw up at that
It was
point.
nasty, you know, and
But
definitely.
you were a trooper and kept playing, right?
Oh yeah. The one time I didn't keep playing, we were playing up in Vancouver one time. This was like our own show, right? And you know, the lights are kind of in your face, you know what I mean? So you can't really quite see the crowd like clearly or anything, but you know, we're playing away, and all of a sudden, just wham! I get this pain in my leg. That's like pretty fucking bad, right? And I look down and realize somebody had taken one of those big beer steins, you know, or the beer things that they have with the heavy glass base on them. You know what I mean? Pretty heavy piece of thing, and it, from just like 5 feet away, just fucking slammed it into my fucking shin. And I still got this bump there from where it happened.
Still.
Right? Yeah, you know, it just made this like thing on my leg. You know, and it hurt like fuck, right? And back then I was just like, motherfucker, right? And, you know, by then I'd done enough punk rock shows to where I was like, oh, go ahead, come up here, you know, and fucking catch my guitar in your fucking mouth, you know? You want to, you know, inject yourself into the situation that much. So I'm like, God damn, it really hurt, you know? And then I see somebody kind of weaving their way back through the crowd, and I realize that's who did it, right? So I dump my guitar off, jump off the stage, plow through the crowd, you know, in pursuit of this of the perp, right? And then I catch up to him, and I'm just like, wham, right? I fucking attack him. And I'm like, wow, they're going down pretty easy. I'm getting the best of this, you know, the better.
Uh-oh.
And then I turned out to be a girl, you know. And I was just like, fuck you. What the fuck did you do that for? That was shocking. That was a good one. That was a good one. We were playing with Black Flag again, right? This was in Vegas, you know. And it was like at one of those punker gigs where somebody's rented a hall. There's no security, you know.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like, just is what it is. And Flag got a lot of, you know, a lot of the punker people in at their gigs. And this dude's standing there the whole night, or during our whole set, just flipping us off. He's kind of this big cholo punker, you know, and he's pretty swole up. You know, remember how Kurt and I were pretty fucking scrawny, you know, but, you know, feisty. Whatever. So the guy just keeps like, you know, hey, fuck you, you know, Lugian, and fuck you, just standing there the whole time. So at one point, it was pretty classic. I thought it was pretty clever of Kurt. Kurt takes a roll of duct tape and pulled out about a 2-foot strip of the stuff while it's still on the roll. And the guy kind of looks away for a second or something. Kurt just managed to catch him and went, Voit! And taped it around his face, right? And he had a cigarette in his mouth at the time, so the cigarette like got taped to the dude's face. Right? So it was just like, that's clever as fuck, you know? And the guy like peels the thing off and whips it at Kurt real heavily, you know, missed him. But then came up on stage to the degree that we're like, hey, fuck you, man. You know, we had guitars on. It's like, you know, go ahead, man. There's two of us. You know, you're going to get clocked real good. And we kind of ran him back down off the stage. And then we tried to play a little bit more. And then he came back and we kind of ran him back down, you know. And finally, like the third time or something, we're just like, fuck it, you know. Here's the payback that, I don't know, touring with Black Flag, you know, there's just, especially when Henry joined the band, right? There was that a different element. This happened, we were playing in San Diego. I've told this story plenty of times because it was just one of those things where you're like, man, I wish I was a little bit brawnier, you know what I mean, or something. Henry was pretty swole up, you know, and he was not only that, but he was athletic and just, you know, he was Henry, right? So Henry Rollins, and it's after the show, and me and Henry and Joe Carducci, this dude that worked with SST, you know, who was also kind of a skinny, you know, glasses wearing kind of guy like I was, you know, or am still, whatever. And Henry talking out in the parking lot. And from across the parking lot, this kid goes, Rollins, you fucking sell out. You know, kind of a thing, right? Because those guys got a lot of that, you know, you're sellout kind of crap. Rollins goes, excuse me. It's just classic, right? And then bolted across the parking lot at this dude. Smashes him on the asphalt, right? Just like, oh, you know, where you like, yeah, you felt that. And he goes, you got something to say it to my face, you know? And then he comes back to us and he goes, I hate it when that happens. It was awesome, right? Just going, fuck, I'm going to start lifting weights, you know, because Henry, like, worked out a lot, you know, he was in good shape, you know. But it was just like, oh, that was a nice little bit of payback, you know. And then those guys took it far enough. You remember the Nig Heist?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I saw them at Madison Square Garden in Phoenix.
Yeah, at the Garden. Oh, they stayed at our house that night, you know. Everybody was staying over at our pad that night. And, you know, the heist, we were talking about them earlier. Yeah. Jackson's High, by the way, because we just had the Hayden sisters. Mm-hmm. So, and I was telling them about, you know, a little bit about, like, the Nig Heist. Uh-huh. How Mugger would take his crap.
Did they know of the Nig Heist?
I don't think they were that familiar with it. They're a little bit more.
Yeah, that show blew me away. That was another one.
No, that's
just like, wow, these guys really, really don't care.
Ooh. Oh, no.
What anyone thinks.
No. And
they would just, I mean, it was just like they put a knife in and just twisted. There's just so many of these humorless fucking kids got into that music at that time, you know? Awful. It went from, I don't know, being like a legitimate, interesting type of music for misfits to just all the jocks and all the fucking people I hated are there.
And it's down to like
guys like that have no other thing to do except fuck with them, you know?
And it's down to like the way you dress, shit that was just like, no, that's why I'm got it, you know, that's why I got into fucking playing music, you know, it's just like, no, this is the realm of my imagination, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with, you know, your fucking imagination or your constraints in any fucking way, you know. So it was satisfying to see those dudes and have the muscle, you know what I mean, to back it up, and the fucking like the the badoink-a-doink power, you know, a little bit of fucking payback, you know. Because, I mean, you see some fucking douchebag, next thing you know, comes up and actually shoots John Lennon. Give me a fucking break, you know what I mean? Guy who's only sung about love and, you know, like, and just ghastly shit, you know. Just some fucking retard, so.
Yeah. Well, I saw in Phoenix, or in Tempe at ASU.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I saw I guess it was probably 1981, I saw The Who, who I loved. That was like, you know, if you're fucking 12 years old, that's like the predecessor to punk rock, listening to The Who. And so they came to Sun Devil Stadium to, you know, on that shitty Face Dances tour. And the opening acts were Loverboy and John Cougar, later to be known as John Cougar Mellencamp. Mm-hmm. And fucking John Cougar goes up first, and he sings a couple of his hits, Jack and Diane, whatever. And somebody there, back in the day, I guess you could bring these things to the fucking stadium, but somebody throws a bottle at him, like a, you know, whiskey bottle or something, hits him in the fucking head, splits his head open, and he's singing the song. You hear the thing hit him. It's Sun Devil Stadium, you know, and then you saw his whole head go red as the blood just went down his face, and these people dragged him off the stage in the middle of the song, and then an announcement comes on the loudspeaker, you know, coming up next, Loverboy. You know, it's like, what the fuck did I just see? Right. And so I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, you know. And then, like 5 or 10 minutes later, John Cougar comes back on stage, and his head is all bandaged like a mummy, just totally covered in gauze, but you can still see some blood seeping through. And he grabs the microphone, and he's like, "You pussy, faggot, cock-sucking little piece of shit. You come up here, I'll fucking kill you." And he just goes on this insane rant. It was amazing. It was so fucking amazing. And then the band comes out, and then they did "Hurts So Good," you know, which was his other single and an appropriate closer. But ever since then, you know, no matter how many bad records he makes, or no matter how many shitty things you hear about that guy, I always have a certain fondness for him, you know, because it was like so intense. It was such a great, we wouldn't call it a performance, but it was certainly interesting.
Right. And at the stadium like that, I mean, the bottle had some loft to it, you know what I mean? Chuck the fucking thing. I'm reminded of like 75 or something. You know that movie, A Star Is Born, the remake of A Star Is Born?
It's filmed at Sun Devil Stadium.
It's filmed at Sun Devil Stadium.
Were you there?
Yeah. Oh, and it's Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson. It's that remake.
You were there when they filmed that?
Yeah. And
it was like 6 a.m. to like
all
3 in the
festival,
afternoon. Yeah.
You know, and they had Peter Frampton played. Mm-hmm. Right? Graham Central Station was there. There was some, you know, Jesse Colin Young, I think. You know, just big acts of the day. And, you know, it's a big-ass fucking crowd, right? And then at one point, like when the light's perfect and whatnot, they start to do the filming for the movie. You know, they put on this really cheap concert. It was like $5 or something to get in. Okay. You know, so they
are basically getting extras
for cheap, you know, by throwing this big concert. You know, and Frampton was fucking huge. You know,
for multiple scenes too, because in the movie, all the big concert scenes just keep, like, as their lives change or whatever, they still keep going there and doing concerts. So it's like all shot in one day, obviously.
Yeah,
they're changing their clothes and shit. So it must have been a long day.
It was a long day, and at one point, you know, the crowd started to kind of get sick of the whole process, you know, of the retakes. Right. You know what I mean? This kind of shit. And so they started like booing, right? You know, like you said, a few guys started or whatever, and then the crowd mentality takes over, right? And I didn't give a fuck, you know. I was just like, I wasn't booing, you know. I mean, I was like a fucking teenager. But what happened next was stuck with me, you know, and it was just kind of like, wow, one person, you know, facing down a crowd like this, right? They got a lot on the line. They're making a movie, you know, and whatnot. So all of a sudden, as the crowd has obviously figured out we can boo during their shoots, you know, we can fuck with these people. And suddenly you got like tens of thousands of people fucking with the film crew who are on stage, you know, Streisand and Bob Redford, you know what I mean? And fucking Barbara Streisand gets a hold of the microphone and just told off the whole crowd.
Really?
It was incredible, right? She's just like, look, and I don't think she was like profane. I don't think, she was maybe she, God damn it or something, something in there, but very forcefully told everybody, look, I put on this concert so you guys can come here and enjoy this music. And if you think you're going to ruin my film shoot, you're wrong. And it's like, she just, the force of her personality, just like told everybody to knock it off, and they did.
Huh.
Like a tape of that.
Yeah, that'd be fucking good. Should have put that in the flick.
Jeez, that is a stinker fucking movie too. I just watched it maybe 6 months ago.
Hey, that was my film debut.
I didn't see you. I was looking.
I was waving at you.
There's no chemistry between those two.
No, it's not.
all.
It's not a good movie. And it's,
No.
Oddly enough, they've tried to remake A Star Is Born several times, and it's always terrible.
That one just, like, you can tell Christopherson's drunk and sorry that he did this. And you can tell. And if you listen, I can't believe this, but I watched it. I listened to the fucking director's commentary, but it's not a director's commentary. It's her basically talking as if she directed the film. And then you read about it and you find out that the director was like, I'll never work with her again. She was a nightmare. She hired me to be the director, and then she just wanted to direct the film. And you know what I mean?
Was it Herbert Ross?
I don't remember who it was.
Huh.
I don't know, but whatever. It sounds like a disaster
To
be there.
it was a fun show. It was a fun show. I had recently discovered White Crosses. You know what I mean?
No.
Which is
Cross-tops?
their speed, right?
Oh, okay.
So,
I don't know anything about that.
no, it was great speed back.
Cross tops and Quaaludes. They don't make either one of them anymore.
No,
It's
no,
a
both of
poor
them
man's-
great buzz.
It's a poor man's speedball, is what it is.
Ooh, fucking Quaaludes. But I love those little White Crosses. I eat
they're
those like
amazing.
candy.
It was. I'll tell you. I happen to know this. What it used to be like is you take a handful of these things and you could drink it with Coke or whatever, and it was like somebody sawed off the top of your cranium so that the wind would whip over your cerebellum. And
Sounds like they should have been recalled by the FDA.
it's a little bit like that. But it was kind of a great feeling back in the day, and then they made them illegal.
So I was on a fistful of those at that show. You know what I mean? And here's what I remember. There was this young woman next to me who had on like coconut body oil. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, surrounded by in the midst of this coconut body oil forest, and this girl had her real short shorts on, and right like where her pubes would have been, there was a little cutout in these shorts, and then the edges of it had been embroidered, right? So it was like this purposeful thing that she did, because she'd had some body modification, and this was back, tattoos weren't as popular.
This drug clearly improves your memory also.
Oh, this stuck with me. Because right there, she had 3 little cherries tattooed like right on her on her pubis, if you will, right? And then had her pants cut out, so that it was like tied up against their. So the whole show, I'd be like, oh boy, coconut wonderland,
Damn, that seems like something they need to show on the big screen again, so we can
Sounds like an
all
outtake.
Suss
try and
her
see
out.
that.
So
Actually, Prairie Prince told me this incredible story about the tubes were moving from Phoenix to San Francisco, and it was like, or I don't know if they were moving or they were going. I think they were moving, but it was the weekend of the fucking Altamont Festival, and so they went to the fucking show, and all that shit went down, and everybody left in a hurry, and it was just hell on earth,
yeah,
But Prairie was there, but he said that they'd moved out with this dog that they had in Phoenix, and that they had all their stuff. They'd moved out. They're there at Altamont watching the Stones and all this, and then hell breaks loose, and everybody's fucking running, and I don't know what happened, but hell broke. Well, I know what happened, but everything went a little crazy, and they lost the dog. They couldn't find the dog. The dog disappeared in the crowd, and they never saw the dog again until that Give Me Shelter movie came out, and they're watching the movie, and here's this scene where it's just like fucking close up of the dog, like in the movie, like there's our fucking dog.
Nice.
Well, that's a good example of it there, of like the crowd, the relationship between the performer and the fucking crowd.
Seriously.
And you see that thing where like you see in that movie the Males Brothers, is that who made
Yeah,
that,
it's the nails, yeah.
And you see like Keith Richards trying to, if they don't get off the stage, I'm not going to play or something. He says something like that, you see him trying to exert his power. or his authority in the situation, where it's like his stage, it's their show, you know what I mean? And you see these fucking angels just looking at him like, there's a skinny little English guy's about to get his fucking noodle busted, and like some pretty fucking creepy, weird kind of shit,
I was looking at the Hells Angels website with my friend the other day when we were on tour to pass the time. We were talking about the Hells Angels and the shit that went down in Waco the other day with those biker gangs. But anyway, my friend Tim looked at the website and was reading it. There's an FAQ, and it's all along the lines of how can I join the Hells Angels? And the answer is if you have to ask that, you're probably not Angels material. Like, how can I get involved? If you don't know already, there's no hope for you. And you're just supposed to be this FAQ answering questions, but It's all just like, if you don't know already, fuck off.
If you're reading this, go fuck yourself.
You wonder, like, why do these guys even have a fucking website, really?
It's just kind of odd that they have a website. But,
maybe to sell merch.
They're a charity organization, and...
That's right.
So...
Well, fuck it. Fucking shit chucked at you. On stage, I don't know.
It's not the best. It's not ideal.
No, it grows old, especially getting beaten with heavy stuff. So now what's up now? Now you do shows, and you've been doing shows for a while.
Yeah, with the Neil Hamburger stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've got a kid at home, so I don't tend to go out for long runs. I tend to go out for little weekend, three night jaunts here and there, and we did go to Australia and did the Melbourne Comedy Festival, which was really fun because at those kind of festivals, you're booked into a room and you're doing like 25 nights.
Wow.
And it's really interesting to play the same room that many nights in a row. It's really good for you in terms of you're doing an hour of talking, and if you're playing the same room, it could start to blend together. And I guess that's what they do in Vegas, but those folks like it blending together because they want to, they want the show to be uniform from night to night. But for me, doing shows in the same room every night, I just start getting disgusted with the sound of my own voice doing the same jokes to what feels like the same place. And so that many nights is just the best for the show turning over and going into all these new directions and just weird shit going down just because I'm willing it to go down out of boredom. So that was a longer run that I did recently, but we did this, shot this movie last year that we're super excited about that's coming out this year. Actually, that's what I was doing at Sundance when I ran into you, as we were premiering it at Sundance.
Oh, cool.
And we had the premiere party across the street from where you guys were playing, and then Jack texts me, and he's like, did you know the Meat Puppets are playing in 5 minutes? And I was like, fuck. I mean, I was in costume. I just performed. I'm like, I got to get over there. So I fucking ran over in costume, And then Jack whisks me in right at the last second, and you guys just started the fucking show, and it was like, how can this be happening? This is amazing.
After all these years. Have you seen that picture of us?
Yeah. I've seen a couple. One? Yeah.
That blue one, it's Petra Hayden. Mm-hmm. You in full drag or full Neil.
Full Neil.
And Jack and I, and that's a fucking...
It's like that $1 Million Quartet picture with Elvis.
Right, and I'm doing Johnny Cash. I'm flipping a bird.
Yeah. Yeah, that was wild. What a scene.
Yeah, that was goofball.
That was fun.
It's just that power of celebrity kind of weirdness. I mean, there's a lot, there's entertainment, but then see people like get all, they're out like looking for stars to look at or whatever.
Well, I just thought it was, because I had such a long history with you guys. I mean, I remember hearing those Meat Puppets 2 songs before the record, ages before when they were like new songs in the set, like, whoa, what's this song, And then to have like really having a movie, your movie premiere at Sundance is pretty fucking exciting. Right. So to have that going on, we're having our premiere party and then run over and it's you guys playing this thing. It kind of blew my mind. And so it was really exciting to jump up on stage and fucking sing. It just felt like the right thing to do. But afterwards I was thinking, geez, is this what, I had so much fun. It felt like the funnest time ever. I'm like, for the audience, is this what it was like when I would see these horrible jams at the Grammys or whatever, where all these fuckers get up and they're all jamming on, Johnny Be Good, and you're just sitting there going, "Shut up! Just
Johnny Be Good.
play the song I want to hear. The way I don't want to hear this. I want to hear the 12-minute version of this fucking shit."
Well, it doesn't sound like there were. Those usually have 47 guitar players.
Yeah, I don't think it was like that, but you got to have your radar out to make sure you never take part in something like that.
I give a fuck, you know. I mean, that was so fun. You know what I mean?
It was really fun.
What's the point of doing this if not to have that kind of fun? And it's, you know, it's
That's
exciting.
what the Doobie Brothers say when they drag Fleetwood Mac and those guys on stage. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But no, I'm not. I loved it.
Yeah, no, so did I. And I mean, I love
photos make me giddy to see. It's like
hilarious, you know. And I love that you've gone on to do what you've done. You know what I mean? Like, just it's fun. We've done this for so long, you know. Meat Puppets has been around for a fucking while, right? And so I've known people like you through my whole adulthood, you know. And to see what you've gone on to do is really fucking neat, you know. So a night like that, no, it's great. And I'm glad you had on the fucking, you know, the Neil look.
It all felt cosmic, right?
Yeah.
That it all came
it's
together.
Totally cosmic, you know. I mean, it was cosmic to have, you know, because I don't know Jack Black, you know, except as a, you know, through his movies and, and Tenacious D and stuff. And then it turns out I hear like he's talking to Kurt and Elmo, and he's like sitting there singing one of our songs at Kurt, and I was like, what the fuck, you know? To like
he knows his stuff, man, and he's also like the nicest,
us, you know?
best guy,
and he turns
in the
out
whole
to be this really sweet dude, you know. And the next thing you know, it's just like
such
fuck,
a genuine, great, hilarious.
And funny, you know.
So funny,
you know.
When the cameras aren't rolling, I mean, he's fucking funny.
And so he took you out for a lot of stuff. How about this? What about those Tim and Eric guys? Let's just talk about them.
Oh
for
yeah,
a second.
that's I just came back from Cincinnati and Bloomington. Tim and I were out there doing some shows on the weekend.
He does like a solo thing.
Yeah, he's got like a stand-up character. I mean, it's you know, it's a weird character. It's a variant on well, I wouldn't say on himself, but it's just like a kind of a clueless right-wing asshole comedian that he does.
Right.
Who's maybe got a little more confidence than he should have, considering the lack of material that he has. You know?
That's awesome.
It kind of works well with Neil Hamburger, I think, because in Neil Hamburger there's a lack of confidence, you know, and with this with his thing there's an overconfidence, you know. And so you know, he's super busy. He's got a million irons in the fire, but he does like to go out occasionally and do some shows. So, you know, we look at the map and pick some, and off we go. We're going to Fargo in August in Minneapolis. You know.
Yeah, I've played Fargo a few times.
Yeah, it's I've been there too. It's good. That place, the Aquarium. You must have played there. Like it's upstairs at some kind of like Irish pub.
I think we did play there maybe the last time.
Like
that Irish pub kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's on the side of the street that the lake is on.
I don't remember a lake. How did I miss the lake?
Oh no, Fargo. I'm thinking of Duluth.
Oh, Duluth. Okay.
It's that big fucking lake. How did I miss the lake?
There's a river.
Hey. Yeah. Oh, Fargo. No. Oh, is it upstairs? I don't remember. It's like right on that strip. That kind of like the one little kind of.
There's like a theater.
Gentrified.
And then yeah.
You know. Yeah.
I mean, so many times I'm on tour, I see posters for you guys coming through soon afterwards. You know, because I play music venues rather than comedy clubs for the most part, because I just. That's the world I know, you know, and I'm always like, oh yeah, I was like, think I should leave a piece of graffiti on the wall here in the green room. Maybe they'll see it, but there's usually so much on the wall that it would be like finding a needle in a haystack.
I try to make a point to read everything on every wall. Just looking for you.
But they cover it with stickers.
You like me?
They cover it with stickers so quickly that even if I left a heartfelt message.
How do those rooms get like that? You know what I mean? You see the places that people get up to write shit, you know?
They
actually have interior decorators
that do that?
They're all fake bands.
Yeah, they're all fake bands.
No, I told this fucking venue in Portland that they built this beautiful green room, and it was just the nicest. They had this nice couch, and they had a fridge, and it was very comfortable. No stickers, no writing, you know? And they had just completed, and I said, look, you need to have a policy where anybody that puts a sticker or writes on the wall is banned from the club forever, because otherwise this place is going to be a shit room like all of these, and this fucking couch is going to have knife punctures in it, and people will have pissed on it.
Pee-pee.
Stickers in the fucking toilet bowl and all this stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then I come back 6 months later and it just was like CBGBs, you know, it's just as shitty as ever. And it could have been such a nice place. It's like, I don't even want to sit on the fucking couch, and it hasn't been very long.
CB's was pretty fucking insane.
I was doing a show there with a band I had, and somebody, we had a table on stage because we had some props, and I pushed it off the stage, and then somebody in the audience took the table. It wasn't a very big table, but took it and threw it on the stage, and it hit the floor of the stage, and like the wood paneling on the floor cracked or whatever. And I swear to God, 100 fucking cockroaches came swarming out of this crack, and like the floor of the stage was just like alive from this table. Yeah, from hitting the fucking thing with a table. Just
right.
Did they take those cockroaches to Vegas?
Yeah, I wish.
Oh, they moved CB's to Vegas.
Did they have a CBGB's? I don't think the original one's closed, but there's one in Vegas.
It's just a brand name like Hollister or Abercrombie and Fitch at this point, but
yeah.
I don't know what goes on there.
That place was crusty.
It sucked.
It's crusty. I remember, I was just one time we did we got signed to a major label, talk about work and business and having done this all these years, and at a particular point suddenly we're, the kind of the way we dress or something is suddenly in vogue, you know what I mean? And we wind up on a major label, and we're playing at CB's, and just our fucking luck, or just the way, the shit can go. And it was for the label staff and all that stuff, right? So the big wigs are there and everybody's there, and we're gonna, come out and wow everybody with our saleability or what the fuck ever. And as we walk out on stage, remember that they didn't even have bottles of water, so it's like one of those nights where you got pitchers sitting next to shit. And as we walk on stage, Kurt kicks his fucking pitcher over accidentally into his pedal board, right? So it's like, ladies and gentlemen, we're really proud to have this new act, blah, 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 the Meat Puppets. Clonk. Wah, 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 wah. It's like sitting there fucking around where you're sitting there just going, dear God, please someone beam me with a fucking bottle. Well, fuck it. Is that a podcast?
That's a podcast.
What's the name of the movie, Greg?
Entertainment.
Entertainment. When's it coming out?
Yeah, Rick Alverson and directed it, and Rick and Tim Heidecker. We all wrote it, and it's coming out, I don't know, October or something. Magnolia Pictures.
Oh, that's so fucking cool.
John C. Reilly, Michael Cera, Annabella Lewin from Bow Wow Wow's in it. We got a great cast. Ty Sheridan, who's like fucking most amazing young actor, plays my opening act. And I don't know.
Oh, I can't wait.
If you got a chance,
Oh, I can't wait.
Check it out.
Yeah.
We're excited. What's that?
Everybody go out and see it.
Well, if you think it might be to your taste, perhaps it may be.
And see people out in the audience throwing like fucking shit at the screen.
It's a fucking
movie.
grim art film. It's not a comedy, so there may be some people even that are fans of mine that end up throwing their tub of popcorn at the screen and storming out in disgust 10 minutes in.
Hey, the best comedy is grim art house.
That's what I think, but
The Brothers Grimm.
I always thought Eraserhead was one of the best comedies ever made.
That's some funny ass shit.
I laughed.
I laughed hysterically.
I laughed. I cried. I laughed again.
Exactly.
Fuck it. Well, bitchin', man. I look forward to seeing the movie. And what a treat. What a treat. Thanks for coming down.
It's nice talking to you.
Yeah, definitely catching up on memories. You think you're going to wreck this podcast? God damn it. Right on. Thanks, Greg.
Today's show was recorded at Winslow Court Studios in Hollywood, California.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, Hood.
Hey, I saw your ad in the fucking paper, man. Looking for alternative bass player, and I think I'm your man. You know what I mean? It's like I feel it. You know what I mean? You want to hear some of my bass playing? I don't have my bass here, man.
Wait,
Have you ever heard of the Crinkles?
I have an idea.
You ever heard of the fucking Crinkles, man?
Let's make a plan.
What's that?
Let's set a place where we can meet.
All right, let's meet right fucking now. You know what? People think I'm a total asshole because I steal all the other members' equipment and sell it for just kidding. Anyway, hey, listen to this. You can use all my fucking songs, lyrics too. I'm so heavy. Gotta get down. Hey, what's the band called?
I won't reveal that, but
You won't reveal that? Oh, you're such a fucking jerk. Hey, but that's okay, because I'm a jerk too. Let's have the jerkiest fucking band in town. I'll hold your fucking hand all the way to the top. What?
Why do you call someone at almost 12 o'clock?
Because it's like, okay, I know it's late, right? But sometimes you just get inspired to rock, right? It's like, what if fucking Ringo hadn't called McCartney at midnight, right? Where would we all be? We'd all be listening to the Dave Clark 5, right? Fuck that shit. Let's fucking jam. I gotta tell you, I made an album for Atlantic Records. I worked in the fucking factory, pressing records. Hey, are you still there, man? Are you with me? Have you ever heard of Jaco Pastorius? Huh? So have I. Are you there, man? Buddy? Buddy?
Wait, you called once before. I know you did.
Oh, I didn't call you before? No way.
There can't be two people like you.
No, there can't be two people like me. They threw away the fucking mold the day I was born, buddy.
Cliche, but,
Oh, cliche. Oh, listen to Mr. Smarty Pants. Let's hear something from you. I've done all the talking. You sit there with your lame, stupid band. I'm trying to fucking fix your band up. What's the name of the band?
I can't tell you.
Oh, you're not gonna... Oh, I'm gonna be in the band. I'm gonna write all your songs, but I don't get to know what the name is. What a fucking jerk you are. You like abuse, so don't you?
What?
So do I. So let's get together and fucking beat each other's asses and then play some rock. Okay? Buddy? What are you laughing at?
No, because
You got your hand on your pud?
But I really want to,
You want to rock, don't you? You ever heard of the Crinkles?
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, aren't you Mr. fucking Suave? Why don't you come down here and fight?
I'd like to.
You want to fight?
Let's meet it.
You want to meet at Hayton Fillmore in 10 minutes? Fucking kick your ass. And then I'll fucking kick your ass with my music.
No, let's...
I'm so high on love.
Let's do it tomorrow. You can set a place.
All right.
We'll do it. I mean, because
You want to fight or do you want to fucking audition me for your dumb group?
No, I want to beat your head in.
You want to beat my head in?
Yeah.
I want to suck your dick. What do you think of that?
So come on.
All right, you want to fight?
Yeah.
Well, let's fight in fucking Golden Gate Park.
Okay, what time and where and all that stuff.
All right. How big are you, by the way, so I make sure that I can kick your fucking ass?
Come on, just set the time and date.
All right. The time and date is this. You know fucking, Chabela Burrito Place on Haight Street?
Yes.
Why don't you meet me there at 7 o'clock? I'll buy you a fucking burrito, and then I'll fucking punch your stomach and watch your burrito fly out my own face, and then I'll kick your fucking head in. And then I'm going to play some bass licks on your grave.
You are witty.
You are shitty. Fucking jerk. All right, so hey, let's just let bygones be bygones. Do you want to fight or you want me in your band?
No, I just don't want you to call here again.
Oh, you don't want me to call here? Oh, well then take your fucking ad out of the paper.
Wait,
Dumb shit.
But there is no ad in the paper.
Oh, that's not true. You want to go to court over that one? You fucking dumb shit. It's right here in the paper. Basis needed, asshole.
What paper is this?
The fucking paper I'm going to wipe my ass with as soon as I get off the phone.
Okay, that's fine, but what paper is that?
I don't know. The Weekly.
And it's, what issue is it?
The issue they just put out today, man. Why do you care? Let's fight. What's your band called? Oh, you're not going to tell me. Oh. Why?
Why should I?
Because I'm in your band. You can't escape me. I'm in your fucking band. I already joined.
Okay.
I'm your drummer. This is a joke! No, I'm not. I'm your bass player, though. Come on, man. Give me a chance. You don't want someone with a distinct personality. You just want to have one of these generic, boring new wave bands, right?
Yeah, we're a new wave, all right. But tonight and introduce yourself, and then we can.
No, I don't want to talk to you. You suck. I want to fight you.
Okay. Well, like I said.
Meet me at the Chabela Burrito Place.
I think.
What?
Do you have another call?
No. I'm going to come see your band, and I'm going to take over. So fuck you.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye.